really what we're trying to do is build smarter exports to turn these behaviors into more structured insights that can be ready for modeling, strategy, action.
Welcome to the Innovation Forge.
Today we explore feature engineering as presented in my Slate 2025 conference presentation. Let's see how innovation meets artistry as we forge something extraordinary together.
You are listening to the Innovation Forge, the #1 podcast on adaptive enrollment management, exploring the data, marketing, and strategy that fuels higher education. Here's your host, David Dysart.
Hello, Guilders, and welcome to the Innovation Forge. I am your host, David Dysart, and I'm thrilled that you are joining me on this journey into the innovative world of higher education and adaptive enrollment management. Hello, Guilders, and welcome to a slightly different version of the Visiting Artisan episodes. I had the chance to present at Slate Summit 2025, and for that session, I did what was basically a brief intro or overview of some feature engineering that is possible in Slate. And I wanted to take some time in video format to actually build those exports and joins and filters. And that just was not going to happen in a 20-30 minute time slot at Summit. So I wanted to record these videos to give folks an opportunity to have that hands-on experience, see how these things are being built. I'm also including the suitcase to also help with those finished pieces, but I definitely feel like giving people the opportunity to learn hands-on as they watch someone doing it is definitely going to help some folks. So in the first episode, we are building flags and counting behaviors. These could be attending events, or logging in, or sending emails, opening emails. And we're actually going to do two different versions of flags. So we'll use filters, and the other way we'll use counts, and we're just seeing if there are any counts, then we'll just say, yes, they did attend these events. Next, I cover score bands, and we use the particular use case of email click rates and being able to bucket those click rates into bands that have similar behaviors, similar group sizes, and those kind of relevant pieces. And the last piece that we cover in the first video is distance. How far the student's school or permanent address is from your institution. In the second video, we cover time-anchored behaviors. And this could be counting behaviors that happen in the last half of April, or if the student registers for an event within 7 days of them getting their admission decision. And then lastly, in the feature engineering piece of just more miscellaneous engineering, we look at building an entity that allows you to track historical engagement scores and predictive modeling scores, so you can understand year-over-year comparisons, how the population as a whole is changing engagement throughout the timeline, and how individuals are either heating up or cooling off in their engagement. Summit presentation, I also group in this miscellaneous feature section coalescing decisions. So if when the student applied or was admitted or deposited, with some kind of backfill time stop or a deadline. So we are only counting behaviors until the student deposits. Or if they haven't deposited, then maybe the May 1 deadline. And we're using some additional formulas to make that a little bit more evergreen year over year by pulling in their round year or application term or entry term, whatever the particular Slate field is for you. So I definitely want to take a chance to get a little bit more hands-on with these, a little reminiscent to the workshops I used to run for Beyond Academics. But this is just very targeted feature engineering. I think this is going to be really helpful for the very technical folks who want to learn configurable joins more and do some fancier things, but also just a good example for maybe your senior leadership or your Slate captains who might not be as hands-on on the data or technical pieces, for them to understand what is actually possible with Slate. And this just gives them a good primer as to what can be done. I'll also link to the PowerPoint session that I put together for a conference, and that might also be good for senior leadership to kind of flip through, just again to get an idea of what's possible with configurable joins. Attendees at this session also got a 50-page abridged version of my book, The Innovation Forge, that covers feature engineering and Slate configurable joins. But I think we'll just leave that for those particular attendees. You can, of course, buy the ebook, audiobook, not the audiobook yet, still working on that, but the ebook and the print book. The original conference presentation, I had actually planned on also adding in some exports on how to aggregate scores and models, building like the logit and the probabilities 0 to 100% and ensemble modeling. Very quickly realized that what was more interesting was this feature engineering piece, especially with the time allotted. So I think I will probably record a third video at some point that does go through those pieces and also allows you to do this prescriptive nudging with the model. And actually that's probably going to be 2 videos as well. Maybe next calendar year we'll do a couple more of these sessions. But I hope you have a good time watching the video and can definitely get some good use out of it. If you have any ideas to make this process better or new use cases, especially with the sequential value groups, I'd love to hear it. Drop in the comments, send me an email, message me on LinkedIn. I would love to get better at these kinds of pieces. And maybe we can also feature you on a future interview on the Innovation Forge podcast. With all that talky talk up front, let's get into it and see how feature engineering takes shape today. I'm going to be taking the time today to record a part 2 of the video, and this is going to cover a few more feature engineering pieces that I went over in the Becoming a Card Shark Slate Summit presentation. These videos are much more in-depth, kind of work along with me than what the Summit presentation was. So we have a few more things we're going to do. Time anchored behaviors, login streaks, and then go over a historical tracking entity with average daily change in our scores. So we'll go ahead and start by, I think for the sake of time, we're just going to make a copy of one of our old behavior accounts, in this case, just event attendances, and use that as our starting point. So we're going to make a copy of this. If you haven't seen this, go ahead and watch the last video. It's about an hour as well. And we went over building counts and flags, email click rates, score bands, distance. And that's a really good primer for the stuff we're working on now. As with the last one, I'm typically going to be building in formulas. You could be using concatenates and coalesce output types, but just using formulas as an example of what's happening. So to start with, we want to look at our behaviors in a really specific time window. In this case, we want to look at basically events that are being attended between April 15th and May 30th, kind of the run up to the May 1st commit deadline for a lot of schools in relation to like regular decision. So we do want to add filters to our existing event count. So if we click into this nested subquery export, you can see we're just as an output type of aggregate. The aggregate is a count, and we're just counting essentially any events that were attended before the deposit or coalescing. If there is no deposit created date, we're just looking at that May 1st and then whatever their round year was. We do want to add a couple of additional filters here. And we did show some examples, and we can pop to one of these. This will have a few more filters for us to work with as well. So we're going to go into the event, and we have some more filters that we already added to this one that we'll just make a copy of this one. Now, we're going to keep all of these because even if the student did deposit, say, April 20th, they might be having more events that they can attend and register. So we still want to only count events that happened before the deposit. But we also want to look at specifically if it was after May 15th. But after April 15th, but still in that April month. So we're going to add another subquery filter. And here we're actually going to look at specifically what the event date was. And we'll do this in months and in days. So we're just going to say date equals April. And we can do a comparison. And we're going to add a form stop. And we're going to add a format mask to this. So we're just going to change the actual name just so we know what it is. And our format mask is going to be a capital M. So this is the month of like month, day, year. This is going to add that running 0. And then we're going to use a literal here. And we're just going to say April for our name, just kind of at a glance be able to see what it is. We are going to do it different for literal though. We're going to add a 04. So we're going to say we want this to equal exactly. We have different operators we can use, but we're going to equal the 04 value of our April literal. And we also want to make a copy of this. And we want the date to be greater than or equal to the 15th. So we're going to change that format to be lowercase d, which gives us that day with a running 0. And we're going to change this to just the 15. And we're going to change this to greater than or equal to the 15th. And this gives you a little bit more flexibility. So you're not using a specific date because we're looking at year-over-year data for this, and we don't want to be updating this filter every year when we add a new cycle. So this just allows us to have really specific time windows that we're looking at that are a little bit more evergreen. It also accounts for like leap years. You're not using a specific day of the calendar. So it has to be in April, and it has to be greater than or equals to that 15th day of the month. So this just gives us that run up to May 1st. So we can inactivate this since we're not going to add that to the interview. So we're just going to, how many events we went to. Between April 15th and before May 1. So we're going to copy that. But what if we want to be a little bit more dynamic with how we're counting events? Maybe we want to know how many events did the student register for, maybe within the week of them receiving their decision of admittance. And this could be admission decision, this could be financial aid letter, package, award, however you want to call the financial aid piece, or a transfer evaluation. So we're going to, we can make a copy of this one up here again. So we're going to make a copy of that count events and interviews. And we can just do that piece where we're just counting events. And we can inactivate the interview so it's not calculating anything. And so we're going to go back into our events nested subquery there. And we want to look specifically this time on counting only events that the student registered for within 7 days of receiving their admission decision. So this is not admission created, this is not admission released, but actually when they opened it. So they're aware that they were admitted, and now we're seeing what kind of actions or engagements are they doing after they know they are admitted. So we'll add another subquery filter here, and just events registered within 7 days of decision, except, except received. And we'll just do a formula here. And before we get into the formula here, I want to just calculate the value we're going to be filtering off of. I think it'll be a little bit clearer and easier to understand what we're doing if we actually calculate the value first. So this is just going to be a date diff. And we covered date difference a little bit earlier, but especially with like the login streaks. But this is just going to be what the difference in dates, and the value will just be the number of days between accept, opened, and the event registration. And we're just going to change this to a formula. And we're going to pull our exports here. So decision, accept, received, open date. And then we're going to then do form start date. We're not going to do form start date because that would be them attending within 7 days. So let's do form response submission date. So we have our two dates. So we're just going to do a date diff. And this is just the SQL way of saying what's the difference between two dates. We do have to declare what kind of unit of measurement. We can do day, week, whatever that increment is. And then we're going to choose our receive date. So that's our first anchor date. And then our next date that it's going to do the comparison to is that form response form submission date. So that's when they actually registered for the event. So we're going to save that. Oh, it would help if I put a comma instead of a period. So now we have the number of days between them opening their decision and them actually registering for the event. So now we can actually look at what is that value and is it between a certain criteria. Again, we could probably do this with a couple of comparison filters. I think this is a little bit easier because we can just do a between and just declare it here. So we're just going to do a date diff. So that if they registered for an event 3 days after they open their decision, that's going to return the value of 3. So is this between 0 and 7? So did they sign up for an event the day of or 7 days after? You could also, if you wanted to score, like, oh, if I think it's a higher score if someone signed up for an event the same day versus 5 days later. You can write a formula to add your scoring rubric to the number of days here, but we're just basically adding a flag of did they register for an event or how many events did they register for in the first 7 days after receiving their decision. So we are going to remove this counting events attended because this is only going to show that Venn diagram of signed up for events and also attended those events. And for like this kind of analysis, we don't necessarily want to know how many events they attended. We just want to know if did they sign up for events and how many did they sign up for. So if they signed up for 3 events within that 7-day window, in this form template, form folder of the event type, before there, and we're going to inactivate that one because that's just before them depositing or if they did not deposit within the deadline. So I think it's a little reasonable to remove that here just for this analysis. And we're counting events within 7 days except decision. So we're going to save a copy there too. So this is not an exhaustive list of the ways you can start pulling these kinds of counts in these time windows, but just give you a starter window to kind of peek into of what you can be doing when you're looking at these specific student journey, say windows or student journey periods to understand how they're engaging with your institution and how that might be correlated or affect your outcome behaviors like did they apply, did they enroll, did they melt, those kinds of pieces. So the next piece is our login streaks. So we're just going to go to new subquery, export. So to do a login streak, we're going to use a tool called sequential value groups. I know of this vaguely as like an advancement tool. I don't know if there's a lot of other use cases for it. But what we're going to do is just say, just give me all the login streaks. And let's just do by days. And we're also going to pull what was the first and last login dates for those streaks. Just to kind of give us some context. And we'll do some more scoring and modeling specific versions of this in a minute. We'll do 3 different versions of these login streak exports, but this just kind of gives you some context. We are going to be pulling all of their login streaks. So as we get that number of days streak and the kind of first last dates, the streaks, we're just going to separate it with a bar here. or pipe. And we're not going to limit the rows. If you wanted to limit this to like 5, you could, 5 login streaks. But we're going to go ahead and do our join. And like I said, so we're actually joining to kind of like a pre-built Slate tool here. So it's called sequential value groups. And we're going to do this a little bit differently than what you would typically set this up for advancement, so that we can get our logins rather than just year pieces, because we're doing dailies. And we'll do weeklies in a minute. But because we are doing logins, we do want to make sure that we're only counting... Did I not? Did I not? Yeah, I'm linked. Okay, there we go. Let's... Yeah, that's fine. We can do the join here. Yeah. So we're going to join to login. And we're actually going to add a filter on login type. And here you can choose, do you want to count direct logins, these are logins by the student, or impersonated logins. So this could be staff impersonating the student and logging to the portal. We only want to count direct logins. If for some reason you had a use case for counting staff logins, you could. And then we're going to do a subquery export here, because we need to give Slate an anchor to basically build the roadmap of daily logins. So we're going to do a date diff again. And we're just going to do day. And I guess we don't. Let's make this a little bit easier to read than the actual formula. To login date. I'm going to change this to formula. And we're going to do our date diff. And we're going to count the number of days. And what we want to do is count the number of days between an anchor date and the login date. I'm going to go ahead and use... we can probably just build a piece here. You could add a literal here, but I don't think we really need to. So I'm going to use an anchor here of January 1st, 2000. Just so it's a little bit simpler, not trying to what was the day before we launched our instance of Slate. You could do that. I'm just something that's a little bit more just conceptually easy. We're not really going to be looking at this kind of epoch date structure. We're just giving it for a Slate to calculate off of. And this login export is the date that the student logged in. So we're going to compare what's the number of days between January 1st, 2000 and the login. And this just gives Slate a framework to understand when they were logging in. Oh, it's not days, it's just day. And we're going to go ahead and save that. So now Slate can understand the time frame in which we're doing our login streaks. So we can just do sequential value groups count. And this is the number of consecutive days of each of those login streaks. But we can also, just for context, understand those first and last login dates. So if you wanted to kind of look at, oh, this is when students are starting to pick up on their logins, or just start understanding where your streaks are that you're seeing. So we're going to build a concatenate here. I can't really preview the data because this is just a clean Slate environment. Well, it looks like they actually have some test records that have, or some records pre-populated in the clean Slate that we can use. But and then we have to, at the moment, Slate is viewing these as just days from January 1st, 2000. So we do kind of have to rebuild our date format. So we're going to do another formula. We're going to do a date add. And we can just do, again, the number of days. And let's export that sequential minimum. So this is that first login. So right now this is just the number of days from January 1st. So we're going to add that number of days to 2000 0101. And that will give you this new date based off of this anchor date, based off the number of days that their first login was. So I'm just going to call this eboc day to date minimum. And okay. And then we can just make a copy of that to do a maximum. Instead of this minimum, we'll do sequential max. Change this to max. So this is going to be that last day that they logged in for each of their login streaks. So we're going to save a copy there. And you can do whatever kind of formatting you want here. Maybe we just want to add a dash. So this would give you like a 2-day login streak, January 15th, 2025, and then January 16th, 2025, to give you a little bit more context as to when the login streaks were happening. And let's go ahead and just maybe we'll add a sort. So we want those longest login streaks listed first. Or if you wanted to sort it by when the login streaks were happening date-wise, you could do that as well. Again, you'd have to use this epoch date to minimum kind of formatting again to build the dates. Or I mean, you could, if you just sorted, then it would just be from that January 1st streak anyway, so you're fine. So we're just gonna save that. So this is a really great contextual piece to understand how the login streaks are happening in your population. But maybe what you want is you just want to calculate what's the longest weekly login streak that the student had. So we can just inactivate these pieces. You might want them back again, so it's always nice to inactivate rather than deleting them. That's not as exciting to watch on video. I don't have to tell you that, though. You're watching the video. So instead of doing this kind of daily increment, we're just going to change this to week. So this gives us a bit more flexibility of, did they log in within that week? We're going to have a little bit of flex on what we're going to define as a week, but this still captures that kind of ongoing, regular engagement that we're getting. And we're already sorting it by the largest. But if we just want the single largest weekly streak they had, we can limit this to 1. So this will just give us that largest login streak as measured by weekly logins. And that might be something that you add to like an engagement score or a predictive model. But we can also, if you're again adding this to scoring and modeling, maybe we don't care how many login streaks they had. Maybe we want to specifically look at what was the number of 2+ day logins or 3+ day logins. And maybe we just want to count the number of times they had those login streaks, or you could even sum the number of days in those longer login streaks. So we're going to do greater than 1 day. And maybe we do March and April. That'll be a fun addition to add to. So again, we'll inactivate these pieces. And we're going to use some additional filters to not only capture streaks that were greater, because this is also just going to return those like single day streaks. If they just logged in randomly 1 day, it'll pop up here. It's not really a streak, but it is just a quote-unquote series of logins. It's just that series is a single day. So if we want to, we can filter based off this count. And maybe we want to count anything greater than 1 day. So that's going to remove a lot of the noise of those single logins. And maybe we also only want to look at logins. Let me pop this up here. Yeah, and we're just gonna maybe add some filters here of just subquery filter again, and just log in March. And we'll do a comparison. So let's get that login date again. And we will compare that with our March. And we'll add that 03. And let's format this into month again. Month. And person login is greater than or equal to March. And we'll pair that with a login in April. And we'll just change that. Again, we're changing the name just so it's a little bit easier at first glance, but we're changing the literal for the actual comparison. So the login month being less than or equal to that 04, which when taken in tandem with these logins, together, it'll be just counting logins that happened in March and April. And this might be a little bit more of a systemic set of filters that you're adding, so we're just going to add that up here. Whereas this is just a little bit more contextual. So we can go ahead and save. So now we're only going to be counting those login streaks that are greater than 1 day. Happened in March and April, and we're going to count them. So if they had 3 login streaks of maybe a 5-day login streak, a 7-day login streak, and a 2-day login streak, the value here is just going to be 3. Now you could, and you don't need a concatenate really, but you could also sum those, and then we could just delete these. So if they had those 3 login streaks, 2 days, 5 days, 7 days, what you're actually going to get is the value like 14. It's going to sum all of those counts together. And we can just change that to sum. So you start getting a more weighted value of those login streaks. So the last thing I wanted us to cover in this video around feature engineering is a historical tracking entity. So I've already kind of popped over there. So we're going to look at our entities, and we're going to create a new one here. And we're just going to call this historical score tracking. And we can add a scope of application. And then we'll pop over to our field editor. And let's go over to prompts as well. And maybe we just add a new prompt key. Score type. And maybe you're doing like an engagement score, a nesting score, application model, a yield model. This just gives you a little bit more flexibility. You can be tracking all of those in a single entity with just a, let's do a nesting, and let's do a yield model. So it allows you to use one entity with a little bit more flexibility with how you are coding all those pieces. And let's just add a new field. We're going to do a related. Historical score tracking. And let's just something simple for our name here. And maybe this is just a total. And historical score total. I don't think we're going to do anything like that right now. So we're just going to do free text. It's just going to write, our query is just going to write a total there. And let's just pull up that again. We're going to make a copy. And I'm actually just going to copy my ID so I can just paste my naming convention there. And maybe I want daily average. So because we are tracking our historical scores in an entity, so maybe you run it twice a week on Sundays and Tuesdays. So you're going to write a total on Sunday, you'll write a total on Tuesday, you'll have entity create a date, or you could add a field for date. So you can get the number of days since the last score was written, and you can compare, and we'll do this in a second, but you're going to compare the score changes. So maybe it was a 10 last time and it was a 15 this time across 5 days. So it's a 1 point daily average increase. And that way you can start seeing how students are gaining momentum, losing momentum in real time. You can do those year-over-year analysis to see where our kind of scores are picking up, or understand how populations are differing, or in different windows in which they typically engage, and picking up values. So we'll just do value there, and we'll just do one more field, and let's save another copy. And this will just be type. And instead of free text, we'll do a single value. And what did I score type? Oh. So yeah, this is just a clean slate. So like apparently they already, I just never updated my, so this is the dangers when you make copies like this. Yeah, make sure you make unique pieces. So now that we have our fields built, we will head back over to our query. We're going to calculate that daily average change. So we'll build another subquery export here. Now we're not going to join, and we'll just do a formula. We're not going to join to our historical tracking entity here because we need to get our most recent and second most recent values. So we're actually going to add a couple of additional subquery exports. And maybe this is just the score difference. I'll just do diff. Rank 1, rank 2 of total. I'll just call this nesting. And we'll do a formula here as well. And we'll do another subquery export. And this is where we're actually going to do our join. And we'll just do historical. Oh, I probably need to refresh all of our pieces here. And then we'll refresh our Configurable joins library. We'll give that a second. And we'll just cancel out all of this. We'll just start this again from fresh. When it's refreshed, okay, so that's refreshed. So let's try this again. We'll add a subquery export. And this will just be score difference, rank 1. Well, this is daily average. Historical track, daily average, nesting. So I'm going to change that to a formula. Another nested subquery, and this will be our score diff, rank 1, rank 2, total. And then we'll do another formula. And we're going to get our rank 1 right now. So we'll do our join, historical score tracking, and we're going to go ahead and filter this on type. And just do this nesting. And let's go ahead and sort on our created date. And we'll just do this descending. We'll format this as real. Real would give you those decimal point access. Integer would just give you those whole numbers. So we'll just do total here. And you do better naming conventions than what I did. So this will be score rank 1 total. So we can save that. And then we'll just do rank 2, which is that row offset. So this will give us the most recent and the second most recent totals. And you'll have to have like a separate query set up to be cataloging these while you're calculating your total scores. So now what we need to actually do is get the difference. So we can just rank 1 minus rank 2. This is probably going to be the larger number unless you have a very substantial use of negative points. And then let's do this for the dates as well. We'll just change this to date. We'll do this to date. I just realized my audio had an issue, so I will probably having at some point switch to my computer audio. Sorry about the quality difference there. Sorry, a little out of sorts now. So yeah, we'll just do date. And change that to date. Date. Now, to get the actual date difference, we'll just do what we have been doing and just do a date difference. Date diff, day. And now we'll flip the order here because we want that kind of first date as our anchor or comparison. And then we'll get that most recent one. So this will be the number of days between the second to last and the last entity runs. And we'll save a copy. So now we have the difference between the totals and the number of days between the totals. So we're just going to do our score difference total. And then we're just going to divide that. And we'll do another null if. We talked about this a little bit when we did our click rates. And then we'll just do our difference of date. That way, if students are just falling into this, or you have something weird with your runs, it just gives you that. So that's, I think, about all I wanted to cover in this video. So taken with the first video, I think this is a pretty good starter for doing feature engineering in Slate. When possible, I tried doing in formulas rather than just with concatenates and coalesces. With like the login streaks, I just did concatenate though, because that's going to be a series of pulls that they were concatenating. So I was not about to do that in formulas. So I think this is a pretty good starter. Let me know if this video is helpful at all, or if maybe I should do more videos like this in Slate. Whether it's configurable joins, feature engineering, or other pieces. Definitely want to make sure that the Innovation Forge podcast is helpful for you all. So yeah, let me know. Thanks and have a wonderful day.
This is the Blueprint Breakdowns, your quick reference guide after a discussion or chapter. Here, we extract the essentials, highlight key points, and help you carry clear takeaways back to your daily work. No guesswork needed. What are the key takeaways from today's conversation?
We'll do a quick blueprint breakdown for this session. Really what we're looking at in the first video is counting behaviors, creating score bands, the distance piece, and what we're trying to do is understand the student better in a way that allows us to engage with them in a more helpful way, increase their student success, increase the institutional success. And really what we're trying to do is build smarter exports. And we're leveraging flags and scores to turn these behaviors into more structured insights that can be ready for modeling, strategy, action. And it's when you start thinking like a modeler that this feature engineering can help you explain, predict, provoke questions even. The goal isn't just to describe what the student's doing, but it's actually to discover their journey and how you can aid them in that process. It also helps you target your outreach. And this could be flags and counts to help define those micro segments, those kind of quietly engaging, or maybe those are just slipping away, and use this to personalize your yield strategy for them. And you can also just start packaging your Slate insights in a way that is easier to communicate and easier to operationalize. So we're able to not just say, okay, well, we know students are attending events, but we can actually start looking at what that behavior leads up to and is correlated with and predictive of those pieces. So I hope that if nothing else, this is just a foot in the right direction for you to start taking a more active approach to your data management and how you can start scoping and delivering a student journey that is very artisanal while also being able to do those more automated pieces of content blocks, translation codes, strategic outreach to the students that are going to have the biggest impact. Until next time, we'll continue to pluck away on my side on these videos.
For those watching the video or willing just to see our next mascot, I need a name for our segment, The Consultant Cadre. Send me an email at theinnovationforagepodcast@gmail.com or find me on the socials like LinkedIn and Instagram to comment your suggestion. As always, I'll send the ebook of The Innovation Forge to all winning name submitters. If you enjoyed today's episode, please grow the guild by rating and reviewing the Innovation Forge podcast or sharing it with a colleague who needs to hear about these creative crossovers in education. The best review or comment every month will get an ebook of my book, of course. Particularly great ones will also be featured on future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me in the workshop today. Remember to strike true and let's forge something extraordinary together.